My name is Christian Alshon and I am a top 5 world-ranked pickleball player. Thank you for coming to the channel. Today we are going to be talking about how I set up my pickleball paddle. If you're just getting into the sport or if you've been playing for a while, it's never too late or too early to start leading up your paddle. I've been using lead ever since the start just because I wanted to get a little bit more power on my shots. We are here to figure out how I set up my paddle. Before we get started, make sure you stay until the end of the video because we are going to be announcing the monthly paddle giveaway winner. All right, every month I'm giving away a free paddle every single month. So stick to the end to see if you won, all right? Let's talk about what you need to set up your paddle. First off, you need a pickleball paddle, all right? So go get a paddle, preferably this one. It's the TKO-CX from Paddletek, great paddle. And then the other thing you need is lead tape, okay? Right here. Those are the only 2 things you really need to set up your paddle, but I like to also use electrical tape on the outside so that my lead isn't out in the open so it doesn't fall off, and so I can keep my edge guard red. So I like to use the red one. Lead is also a little toxic, not like the relationship kind, but it is literally toxic and it can cause cancer if you consume it or something. So make sure to wash your hands right after you're done with this. You can wear gloves. I'm not today, but you can. Make sure not to touch your face after touching lead, super important. And then the other thing you need are grips, all right? I've got some grips right here. Oh, and then last, you don't need this, but this helps a lot. It is a scale. I use a scale every now and then, but I do the same thing over and over again, so I don't really need to weigh it. There's not too much manufacturing error with these paddles. They all come in exactly what you order them. So in the past, I've used paddles where you have to weigh them every time you set them up because they can come in with a 0.4 ounce discrepancy, and this one always comes at the weight you want. But we're not here to sell this paddle directly. Yeah, so just to run down, what you need is a paddle, lead tape, a scale helps. I like using electrical tape, and then a grip. Those are the 5 things to get an awesome paddle. So let's get into it. Let's talk about the reasons why somebody would put lead on their paddle real quick. The first is power. If you have more lead on your paddle, you're going to have more power. Other than power, you can also get more spin, and you can either increase your swing weight or decrease your swing weight depending on where you put the lead tape. So let's get into it. So right when I started playing pickleball, I wanted more power with my paddle. So what I started doing, or what I did, is I put lead on the bottom corners right next to the throat. And that allowed me to get a lot more power and a lot more punch right here, because the paddle is gonna be a little bit heavier, so you're gonna have a little bit more force when you hit the ball. Whereas if you put lead on the top up here, you're gonna get a little bit more spin because the swing speed will be a little bit faster, and you'll get more flick and all that. So I've tried it all. I've put it all the way around. I've done just the bottom. I did just the top. And what I found is that for most of my pickleball career, I liked it at just the bottom because I was able to get spin and a lot of rotation with my wrists, but I struggled getting just power just because it's hard. There's a lot of powerful paddles and I didn't always have a powerful paddle. So I used to put it here. We can even see with this paddle right here. Here's one of the Paddletek prototypes. You can see I put lead tape on the throat. It even says my name on it right there. Hopefully that focuses in. And I'm gonna show you just the difference in these paddles so you can just see how we got to the final outcome. I mean, look at the difference there. This is so rectangular. So after switching to Paddletek, I got a lot more natural power and I didn't need so much lead down here because it was a pretty well-rounded paddle. So what I started to do is put very thin lead, because I would put thicker lead right here. I'd put very thin lead from the throat all the way up here, all right? And I would do that on both sides. Here's an example of it. I would take the lead, and I would put it all the way here, and I would go all the way up. I would go pretty high as well on both sides. And I continue to use that setup to this day. So now I like to put the lead down here, come all the way up here and stop on both sides. I could go to the top, but to be honest, my coach Lee Waters suggested that I try this because I was doing this and that was, more directed for a different paddle. So she suggested that. I tried it out and I've just kept doing it. So, at the end of the day, the lead helps, but we're talking about small differences here. So if you're just trying to have fun, don't worry about it too much. And also, if you want to get better, just put lead somewhere. Put lead here and here. Just make sure you keep it even on both sides and see how it goes. Like, put a ton of lead on, put a little bit of lead on. It's a little bit mental, I'm gonna be honest, for most people, but including me, but I like to put lead on it. It makes me feel like I've set up my paddle personally and that I'm ready to go use this paddle. So now let's actually lead the paddle. The way I do it specifically, it's very simple. I take the lead and I take a paddle. I always take the paddle, so I go through a lot of paddles, as you can see, and I always take the paddle that I've used last, or one of the ones I've used last, and I trace it. And I trace it like this. So I line it up, and then I put a little mark in there with my nail. Then you can get a pair of scissors. And then you cut it, and then once you have one that's already done, you can just use that one for the next one, or however many you want. And if you don't want to always have to trace your paddle, you can just keep one piece of lead out like this so that you can retrace it. It doesn't take that long. I leaded a paddle start to finish this morning, and it took me less than 5 minutes. And then I gripped it too, maybe another minute. And then something that I really wanted to point out is when letting your paddle, like it's not that deep. These are small, very small changes. All right, like it's not gonna be the end of the world if you have a little bit more weight or a little bit less weight, but you want to try and keep the same weight. So we're gonna look at this paddle for the weight. Let's put it on the scale. Put this on the scale. 8.5. So I weigh my paddle to about 8.5 ounces, maybe 8.6. And I mean, if you're using the same lead tape and you're putting it in the same position, it's going to weigh the same. That's only if you have a paddle that comes in at the same weight every time, which a lot of paddles are not like that. So you got to be very careful about what paddles you get. And then what I do, just to make sure I'm putting it in the same spot, because I want to be as careful as possible. I simply do this every single time. It's funny. And I just eyeball it. I'm like, all right, that's about there. That looks about right. So if I'm a little bit off every single time, it's probably going to cancel out, I make sure not to go too high, not to go too low. And then the one thing that you'll notice is different about this paddle, about this new one than this old one, is this new paddle only has one strip of lead tape, whereas this old one has two. So this old one was 1/4 inch. This lead was about 1/4 inch. I believe it was 0.25 grams per inch as well. This lead tape is the same exact width, but now it is twice as thick, or 0.5 grams per inch. And honestly, I struggled to buy lead online, and it's like I've bought in the wrong weight in lead so many times. I have like, because there's some really thick lead and I bought in the wrong ones so many. It's crazy. So if you want to get the right one, or if you want to get the one I use, I'll put a link in the description. I'll put both. I'll put the thin one that I use twice as much, and I'll put the little bit thicker one that I only use one. Some people prefer a thicker width. I'll also put one of these in the description, the one that I used to use, all right? I like to use the thinner one, so I'm not really letting it up, and I can always, put more lead on. It's hard to take lead off. And then you gotta make sure you're pushing down the lead on the paddle just so it stays. Since lead is a little bit toxic, I like to grab the wrapper, just push it down. Usually you can see the excess lead that comes off of it, and you don't want that stuff. See, it's not that easy. Anyway, there we go. Once again, I really just, I eyeball the heck out of it. It's, usually what I can do is I can line it up and I can just move it over, and it's about the same exact spot. Sometimes I want to make sure I get it right. So as casual as I'm sounding right now, I do focus pretty hard. Okay. And I did it earlier. So I did this earlier, and I noticed that the thinner one, or the thicker lead where I only have to use one strip, was a little bit lighter than the double. So I purposely made it a tad bit longer. It's longer. It's not that much longer. Same thing over here. So next up, we put the electrical tape on. Oh wait, this is funny. So 8.3. So when I weigh it right now, it only says 8.3 ounces. That's because I don't have the electrical tape or the grip on. Once you put both of those on, it should go to 8.3 ounces, or it should go to 8.5 ounces. This is pretty easy. I mean, since my paddle is red and my electrical tape is red, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if there's some discrepancies. Let's look at this technique. So I'm gonna push it down, go right there. Yeah, that's how you lock in, baby. Locked in to grip this paddle, or to set up this paddle. All right, so, and then, push it down a little bit, make sure it's on there. You don't want that coming off. And the electrical tape will actually be a very nice thin shield for the edge guard. I mean, the edge guard is a shield for the paddle. So think of it as a shield for your shield. And you'll notice that the edge guard and electrical tape start to fray and rub up against the ground and start to, break off. Anyway, now that I added the electrical tape, as you can see, it is 8.4 ounces. So the electrical tape is about an ounce. And then lastly, let's put a grip on. So a lot of you guys ask what type of grip I use. Ever since I was a kid, I've been using the Wilson overgrip. No, I'm not sponsored by Wilson anymore. I was sponsored by Wilson almost all of my junior tennis career, and I used the Wilson blade. Great racket if you like tennis. But this video is not about tennis or my tennis racket setup. It is about my pickleball paddle setup. And I'm struggling with this grip. There we go. And I've been using the Wilson overgrip. I mean, I've used the Yonex one as well, and that one's pretty good, but I really like the Wilson one. Before I do this, I'll say that Bodie Pickleball sent me some grips, and of course I'll try them out. I appreciate him for sending me them. So I gripped it this morning, and I go out and I play, and I feel the grip, and the grip is it feels more rubbery. It does feel like it grips my hand more, which I don't know if that's better or worse, because now it's I'm more set, whereas I like to be very loose and make sure I can I switch my grip a lot in pickleball. I'm here and I'm I loosen my grip and I loosen my grip and I switch it a little bit for my flick. Then for my forehand, I switch it again, and I do a lot of this with just one hand. But I tried out the grip and something felt off, and then I realized that I gripped a 14.3 millimeter paddle and I used a 12.7, and I was like, it's just not getting the power. And I couldn't tell what was off. The grip handle was bigger, and I was like, is the grip bigger? Anyway, I might give it another chance, but you guys just asked what grip I use, so Wilson overgrip. I'm not sponsored by Wilson or Bodie Pickleball, but you know, I always appreciate when somebody sends me something to try out. Usually I don't sit this close to these paddles. I'm farther up, but to get more of a shot so you can see the paddle, I'm like pretty close to it, and I'm gonna knock that thing over. Low key, I already knocked it over when I was setting all this up. It was not fun. Okay, let's see if I can not embarrass myself right here. I've been gripping paddles way longer than I've been paid to grip paddles, you know? All right. So when you grip a paddle, this is actually really important. The beginning is super important. It's gonna be hard to tell from this angle, but the beginning is super important because you gotta come here, and right when you get across, you gotta start going down on an angle. You gotta start going on a downward motion. But you don't want slack right here. You don't want to do it. You don't want to go down and there's a ton of slack right here. You want to go down and that's tight. So you've got to basically just pull and kind of like wiggle it so that you're going down. I like to have, let's say, like about 1/4 of an inch again. I like to have about 1/4 of an inch for every overlap, as you can see. And then, I mean, once you get going, like as long as you just keep like a relatively similar distance or 1/4 of an inch length, it's quick. So, I mean, there was actually one time where I rushed doing a grip and I rushed the beginning. You can rush the end and it's kind of fine, whatever, but I rushed the beginning. And it was in a pickleball match, it was in the third, and it was 6-5, and we split. And I rushed, and I was not happy with the way I did it. It was uncomfortable, and we lost. And it wasn't because of the grip, but I was thinking about the grip, and I was thinking, like, dang, I didn't do a great job. And you can't be thinking about that as you're playing. That whether that was the reason or not, it definitely negatively affected my pickleball play. Anyway, so 20 minutes later, here we are. A perfectly set paddle. Yeah, let's check it out. And then now for the real test, let's weigh it. No way, no way. Okay. Well, so as you can see, it's 8.6 ounces, whereas this one's 8.5. Oh, I just realized, because I was like, what? This doesn't make sense. This does not have the electrical tape, and that would add an ounce to it. So there we go. I mean, to be honest, I never use the scale. I use it like the first time I set up my paddle, and then after that, it just over and over again. Like, there's not gonna be much variation. Let's see what's next on the agenda. Anyway, so I mean, that's most of what we're gonna talk about. I made this video because you guys have asked over and over again for a paddle setup. It's kind of like you guys like paddles or something, I don't know. But this is how I set up my paddle. Thank you so much for watching. Before we close, congrats to the winner of the monthly paddle giveaway right here. You just won a paddle, ah! I've got a couple spare, so definitely gonna make sure you get that. Thank you so much for watching. If you wanna be eligible to get a paddle, subscribe to the channel. Right now, all you have to do is just subscribe, and I'm gonna pick one lucky subscriber at the end of every month to give a paddle to. So thank you so much for watching. Hope you enjoyed, hope you learned something. If you didn't, I don't know how you made it this far, but anyway, YouTube thinks you're gonna like this video right here, right here. It could be here, but I think it's right here. Go check it out. Peace.